but let me just turn this over to Judge Gail Hagerty. She's going to discuss findings from the North Dakota Judicial Energy Task Force to get us started this morning. Welcome, Judge Hagerty.
Thank you. This year I'm serving as president of the State Bar Association. I'm not here to speak or to share my great expertise in oil and gas law. That would indeed be a very short presentation. As you may know, the 44 district judges in the state of North Dakota are all generalists. We aren't experts, and so we really benefit from having members of the bar share their expertise and educate us at times. The North Dakota State Bar Association formed a Justice System Energy Task Force about a year ago. Catchy name? Probably not. The task force was born out of a concern that there would be funding for infrastructure in energy impacted areas, but that no one was thinking of the justice system as part of the infrastructure. So as we approached the legislative session, we wanted to be able to present the needs of the justice system to the legislators in a way that would make sense. Our overriding idea or theme was that an effective, efficient, and responsive judicial system is a vital part of the infrastructure necessary to maintain the quality of life in North Dakota and also necessary to support energy development. We weren't talking about the court system. We weren't talking just about we need more judges or court clerks. Instead, we had a broader concern for the justice system as a whole in energy impacted areas. And as we began the process, we realized that we were playing catch-up ball all the time. We were always 3 steps behind what was happening. The information that we were relying on was old, and there wasn't a great deal of solid, factual information. So we decided we needed to gather some information and somehow make sense of it so that we would be in a position to support recommendations brought before the legislature and other governmental bodies. Our task force was chaired by Jack McDonald of Bismarck. Jack was going to be here and help with this presentation, but he's a lobbyist. He lobbies the district judges and the Supreme Court justices in North Dakota all chip in, and we hire Jack, and he represents us with regard to issues involving our salaries and other court appropriations. The hearing is at 9 this morning. Jack won't be here this morning. He did just a fantastic job chairing this task force and keeping it kind of moving forward. Other members included Aaron Burst, Charles DeMakis, Jim Fitzsimmons, Judge Bill Haroff, Robin Hughesby, Dennis Johnson, Senator Stan Leeson, Nathan Madden, Judge Bill McLeese, Representative Shirley Meyer, Judge David Nelson, Carolyn Probst, Wayne Stenjum, Judge Pat Weir, and Marlis Wilder. We decided we'd hold hearings and gather information. So we held hearings in June in Dickinson, Bismarck, Williston, and Minot. They were loosely modeled after legislative hearings, but we tried to get the word out so that people who had information to share would come and share that with the task force. What we learned was there were so many issues and they were all intertwined. There was a lack of legal services available. There was a lack of housing. There was a need for additional law enforcement. A desperate need for more social service resources. We needed additional court staff and we needed additional judges. We came up with a series of recommendations, and I'm going to just briefly summarize those recommendations and where we're at in the process of achieving our goals. We determined initially that there is a constitutional crisis that is rapidly approaching if the Indigent Defense Commission is not given adequate resources to provide constitutionally mandated representation for indigents charged with criminal offenses. We heard that theme in every single hearing. We learned that not only was there a crisis in Williston, Dickinson, Minot, but there was kind of a compression effect. Attorneys indigent defense attorneys from around the state were being called on to provide additional services in the far western part of the state, and that meant that fewer services were available in those communities where the attorneys were sent from. The State Bar Association makes obtaining additional funding for the Indigent Defense Commission a legislative priority. In the 2013 session, the Indigent Defense Commission is asking for 5 additional full-time employees, and they were seeking $1.5 million in general fund dollars during the legislative session, and increased spending authority. That legislation has been presented. Their appropriation is moving forward at this time. My concern is that perhaps we didn't ask for enough, that perhaps that isn't going to be enough to meet the very real needs. So that will be an ongoing process and something we'll have to continue to work with. The State Bar Association is requesting additional judicial system resources, particularly 2 additional judicial positions in the western part of the state and a whole lot of clerk of court positions, particularly in the Williston and Dickinson area. We thought that a minimum of 2 additional judges were needed in the Northwest Judicial District. There was a critical need for 4 additional clerk positions in Williams County. There's a chronic need for additional clerk services in the entire western part of the state. At this time, legislation that would provide the additional judgeships is moving forward, and in fact, the Senate added an emergency clause on the bill to provide those judgeships. That hadn't been requested, but the Senate added that, so that we are hopeful that we'll be adding those judge positions sooner than the beginning of the next fiscal year. The additional clerk positions remain in the budget at this time. I should say that the judiciary budget started in the Senate. We anticipate it will be more difficult presenting that budget on the House side. The State Bar Association is supporting requests for additional staffing and space needed by state's attorneys in the energy impacted counties. And the State Bar Association is assisting with and supporting development of security standards for county courthouses. We are supporting funding requests to provide necessary security. That was an issue that we heard about over and over as we held the hearings. We believe additional funding is needed to provide civil legal services for low-income people so they are not denied access to justice. We have reactivated a pro bono task force to consider the needs related to the energy impacted areas of the state. That's being chaired by Nancy Morris, who will be president of the State Bar next year. We are actively supporting legislation at national and state level to increase funding for legal services North Dakota, and we're partnering with legal services in seeking private funding sources. We are aware that there's a desperate shortage of attorneys in western North Dakota. We believe that impacts the ability of people to have meaningful access to the court system. We are partnering with the law school to raise awareness of the need for additional attorneys in the western part of the state. We also are working toward a project that would provide for summer clerkships, law clerks who would work with judges in rural areas. And we think that would give them an opportunity to learn a little about some of the judgeships in counties with less than 15,000 people are considered rural judgeships. So we would try to partner law students with those judges who are serving in those areas, since there is a real lack of attorneys in many, many of the more rural counties. We're working with the law school as it develops a curriculum which will result in graduates being prepared to practice law in solo or small practices. We are also supporting efforts to provide housing and other infrastructure necessary to allow attorneys, staff, and other professionals who provide necessary resources to practice law and to live in energy-impacted areas. One of our overriding concerns was that the justice system just cannot operate fairly if law enforcement and mental health resources aren't available. So we are supporting in every way that we can requests for funding for additional law enforcement officers, additional personnel at the state crime laboratory. We know that there's a problem with service of process in sheriff's offices, and we know that there is a desperate need for additional mental health professionals and domestic violence victim advocates. So we have a lot on our plate. We've tried to organize and support our requests through the work of the task force, and we think that it's something that the State Bar has an obligation to do. Thank you.